Should we leave the door open or are we?
It gets louder out there.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Melissa King. I'm a professor at Berry College, and I am here to introduce a number of our wonderful senior scholars and their writing, and a number of our wonderful students at Berry College and their writing. I've had the privilege of being involved with Oak Hill Senior Scholar Program, specifically the Write Your Life course, for the past several years. During that time, I have met many wonderful humans, some of whom are here today, actually, all with one thing in common: the desire to tell their stories. Much like Retha's maternal ancestors, I have been fortunate to serve as a kind of midwife to many diverse and fascinating tales. I have had the pleasure of watching storytellers come into their own and find the language they need to give a clear and resonant voice to their life experiences. The folks that will share their stories today are a small but marvelous sample of this larger phenomenon. I have run along the banks of Dykes Creek with Leonard, as he's written about both his own and his father's childhoods in the Rome area. I've opened the front door onto 4th Place in Miami to see Terry's vivid neighbors. I've gone illicit Christmas tree hunting with Judy, her sister Patty, her mother Fanny, and Mama in Chickamauga. And I've ridden along with Retha's Midwives to help deliver another squalling mouth into the world. As you can tell, it has been quite the transporting experience. I'm forever in the debt of all the storytellers that have shared their stories with our classes, and delighted that we have a space today to share some of those stories with you. Our senior scholars storytellers are joined today by young storytellers from the other side of my life. Students from Berry College who are studying creative writing and work to produce Berry's literary journal, Ramifications. We are afforded too few opportunities to bring generations together in this way, to share the love and joy of a craft. I am excited that today will provide this rare opportunity. Many thanks to Allison Moore, who couldn't be here today because it's her birthday, and Bailey Casey, and the rest of the staff at Oak Hill, who are absolutely incredible for working so hard to make today's event a reality. Thank you so much. And since we are starting out with Retha, I'm going to give you just a little introduction to Retha. Retha describes herself as having a life, quote, blessed by good storytellers. She says of the female storytellers in her family, quote, they had secrets, and they kept them badly. More was implied than stated in what they told, but implied so strongly that they sparked imagination. Over many years, Retha fanned the coals of this spark into creatively imagined memoir of both her own life and the men and women whose hard work shaped the land and the people around them. About a year ago, Retha began to put together her collection, Helpmeets, Midwives, and Snakebit Women, Stories of Ancestral Strength in Earnest. It's been my delight to help in any way I could along the way to make this vision a reality. Today marks the book's public debut. Right. Please welcome Ms. Retha Williams. My lady.
Always. That's no fun if it's not trouble.
My thanks to Melissa for everything, and for Allison and all the people of Oak Hill and Berry College who've made this possible. My thanks to Berry College and Oak Hill for providing a home for elder riders. The Senior Scholars Program is very, very important to us, and we appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who has worked to set this up.
And who's here today.
Yes, yes. By popular demand, Melissa's reading. I'm going to read excerpts from a story called The Ballad of Lily Brown. I love the cover of the book that Melissa designed, and it's got a picture of Lily and a woman said to be her sister-in-law. This is Lily on the left. On September 20, and this story is told from the viewpoint of my great aunt. Her name was Laura Williams. On September 20th, 1891, when I was only 3 days old, and she was not yet 17, my sister Lily ran off with Will Brown, the peddler. Our mother was still in childbed, confined to her room and ordered not to bear weight for another week, which she did not mind since childbirth was the only time she could get some rest. After 9 births, mothering fatigue had set in, and I imagine that she took full advantage of the belief that postpartum women should have strict bed rest for several days. I can also imagine that she was fractious and hard to please. Once again, most of the business of a wife, nursing, housekeeping, cooking, washing, and caring for the baby, the other 7 children, and our father, had fallen to Lily, the firstborn and the eldest daughter. Inconvenienced, tested, and exhausted herself by her many siblings, Lily decided that if she was going to keep a house and raise children, they might as well be her own. Early that morning, Lily went out to the barn to do the first milking, as she normally did, but she didn't return. After 7 o'clock, the cow began to bawl. Papa was sitting on the edge of the bed, reading the newspaper aloud to Mama, as was his custom, while he waited for Lily to get his breakfast on the table. When he heard the cow, he noticed the time in his empty stomach. "Where's Lily?" he asked in the voice of a sleeper who wakes and does not recognize the place where he finds himself. He went looking for her in the kitchen. The 5 boys were all sitting around the table, ready to be fed. The stove was idle, fire gone out, table bare, and Lily nowhere to be seen. He went out onto the porch. Annie and Trudy were playing in the dirt under the clothesline where only half the dried garments from yesterday's wash had been folded into the basket. He hollered out to the barn, "Lily, see to that cow and to our breakfast." No answer. He called again, louder, then louder again. Then he looked down in the yard. Then he stood down in the yard with his fists clenched. When the boys straggled out of the house, Fred walked up on Papa, standing in the dust and staring at the barn door, with something slowly taking shape on his face, something like fear, but with hard edges around it, as though what he was feeling was too tender to bear and had to be protected. It looked so odd on him, this face he had never worn before, that Fred had to turn away. Papa didn't say anything and didn't stir, just stood there with that cow bawling louder and louder. He looked like he knew something was wrong in the barn, like he knew exactly what it was, but he couldn't make himself go inside and see what he would see. So Fred ran in to look for him. What he saw was Lily's apron hung neatly on a hook behind the empty milk pail, and in the distance, the back gate standing ajar. He memorized it. Empty apron, empty pail, open gate. The barn was dim and absolutely still, except for the bawling of the cow, and the sound hurt him so much that Fred began to cry himself and ran outside to look at Papa's face again. It was all there in the face. They could search the farm and the woods and the whole county twice over, but the face knew everything already. Proof was just a matter of time passing. Lily's gone, Fred sobbed. Then Papa pushed him aside to see to the cow. I have imagined it over and over again. It's hard to piece together. I know some of it from what Fred and the other boys told me through the years, some of it from Mama and Trudy, and the rest I just know, like an old ballad sung so many times. You don't need the missing parts to tell the story. I know because I know them. I can see them all, what they were doing, what they were thinking, where they stood or sat, and me, indoors, lying in the cradle, that seasoned cradle, never empty long enough between babies to get cold. Me and some of those little hand-me-down clothes that Mama stitched and tatted and mended, saved back for the next baby coming as sure as the next sunrise. Pretty little clothes, stitched strong, but with frayed edges now, and spots thinning out like Mama's hands. Me hungry myself and beginning to bawl like the cow and like Fred, because Mama isn't supposed to bear weight and can't lift me from the cradle to her breast. I guess you'll be the cook now, Papa called to Annie as he passed with his pail of milk. Annie looked up and laughed like he was making a joke. But she was the next oldest girl, even though she was only 5. He set the milk on the kitchen table and went in to Mama. "Hand me Laura," Mama said, exasperated. "Where on earth is Lily?" Papa stood for a long moment, watching me suckle and wondering what to say. "Gone," he finally muttered. "Gone where?" Mama turned an uncomprehending expression on him. "Long gone by the looks of it," he said more to himself than to her. "Did anybody come by here yesterday?" "Just that sorry Will Brown and his wagon," she answered with distaste as she changed me over to her other breast. Then looking up in recognition, she lunged from the bed. Like Papa, she knew a snake had robbed their nest, and she knew its name. "Tish, get back in that bed," Papa commanded. "You'll damage your womb." "Then let it fall out." "I've given you 9 children. We don't need any more to grieve us." She headed straight to the room Lily shared with her sisters, me still clamped to her breast. She opened the chifforobe and surveyed what hung there. Lily's best dresses were gone, as well as her Sunday hat. The suitcase that was usually stowed away on top was no longer there. Now, when did she manage to do that? She asked with a note of wonder. Papa stood next to her, peering in at the empty space. Must have packed late last night while we slept. Probably hid her case in the hay, then sneaked off this morning from the barn. He could imagine Will Brown's wagon waiting for her, out of sight, just down the lane. You must go after them. Go where? What direction? North, south, east, west? Tish, they're long gone. I'd never catch them up. Well, you must do something. Try something. At least try. Mama stomped back to her room and began to dress herself. Get back in the bed, Tish. No, you go to town. Ask around if anybody's seen them. Ask the judge if they applied to be married, and light the cook stove as you leave. Papa drove the wagon into town, inquiring from friends and neighbors along the way if they had seen either Lily or Will Brown or both together, but no one had. The justice of the peace had. He married them first thing when his office opened. He didn't know where they went from there. Will Brown's horses and wagon were in the livery. Boarded for a month, the manager said. The station master at the Ringgold Depot said Will Brown had bought 2 one-way tickets for the first southbound to Atlanta. Papa took the news home. Well, at least she had the good sense to insist on marriage before she let him put her on a train, Mama conceded. I hope that's not all, she refused him. The Browns were big merchants in the city, Lily had claimed. Rich, she said. But what she didn't say was that the family had sent Will off to the hills in a rolling store because they were fed up with his drinking and gambling and whoring. They were tired of fathers turning up with paternity claims for their daughters. It was both a kind of exile and a last chance, and it made him everybody else's problem. They thought there might be less temptation and less trouble in the hills, no saloons or loose women, but there is always liquor and a friendly bet to be made behind the livery. There are farm girls with freckled noses from hours hoeing corn in open fields and long braids that let down like any woman's hair. A scoundrel makes his own trouble when none is ready-made. Will traveled 3 counties making his rounds, but he preferred Catoosa because the moonshine was good off the main tracks, back up in the ridges along the Tennessee line, in places where cautious men feared to go. He soon became a blight, a disease spore the wind blew in. Mothers learned to run their daughters indoors if they saw him coming. Fathers whipped their sons for being seen in his company. But still, they traded with him out of convenience, if not necessity. And for fashionable tat, he supplied the womenfolk. And he never liked moonshiners eager to sell him corn liquor. Papa and Mama knew, of course, that he had set his sights on Lily. Young people can rarely conceal the mating dance once it starts. But they thought they could stop him by saying no. No, you can't, to her. No, he won't, to themselves. No, you can't walk out with Will Brown. No, you can't ask Will Brown to Sunday dinner. No, we do not approve. No, he won't get around us. No, he can't possibly ruin our good girl. But Will Brown had a lot of eyelashes and a lot of charm. He was bold, and he had a silver tongue that could make a sale even when you resolved not to buy. What they didn't know about their Lily was that though she was a good girl, she could love the bad with a doomed fascination. In a month, they were back in the county, bold as brass. They rolled up in Will's wagon, Lily sporting a new hat and a smart attitude. Will left her to face the music alone. The honeymoon was over, he told her, and he had to get back on the route since he had a wife to support. He would be back at supper time. Butter them up, he advised, so they will ask us to stay. I could use a hot meal. When our brothers and sisters ran out to greet her, all they saw of Will Brown was the back of his wagon disappearing down the lane. Our parents hardly acknowledged her entrance, but she pretended not to notice and chatted away like it was a normal family reunion after a long absence. She was full of stories about her first train ride and about Will's family. The Browns were this and that. The Browns said this and that. Will's family had a big mercantile and a big house in the big city where there were streetcars to take you everywhere. Will's family were all thrilled that he had made such a good marriage, and his father was going to build him a crossroads store over the Tennessee line at Robinson's Corners so they could stop traveling. Will's mother had lovely clothes, and she had given Lily her new hat as well as 3 new dresses and a pretty pair of kid high tops. Will's mother set the table every night with fine china and cut glass. Will's mother thought Lily was the best cook she had ever met for a girl so young, and said her mother must have brought her up with care. She eyed Mama to see if any of it was having an effect, but her face was impassive. Will had the cutest little sister with the tiniest waist she had ever seen on anybody. She pulled out a tintype portrait of Lily and a girl. Mama took it to the light for examination, and what she saw was a common-looking woman with a broad face, foxy eyes, and too many finger rings, and 2 long rows of enormous white buttons that stood out like a boast on her dark dress. Was all she could manage to say. None of Lily's remarks were true, of course, though she rendered them with conviction. We later learned that Will Brown's family were simple people. All of them were cotton mill workers, and Will and his brother had been hired out to the mills as soon as they turned 10. They didn't have a mercantile. Late in life, his parents would run a boarding house in Atlanta, but even then, they didn't own the building. They certainly never owned a big house of their own, and if they helped Will Brown get a peddler's wagon and a crossroads store, they must have done it at great sacrifice to themselves. We wondered in the end if she had even met his parents at all, or had swallowed tales about them from Will, hook, line, and sinker. "Don't get puffed up, miss," Mama barked to bring her up short. "The Browns may be one thing, but their son is quite another." "Oh, my Willie will change now that he's a married man," Lily assured her. people don't change except to become more of what they were from the beginning. Mama truly believed that. Then what are your plans? She said. Well, Lily began cautiously, I hope we might be able to stay here until the story's finished. Mama pretended to consider this option for a moment. No, I think not. This house is not big enough to accommodate another married couple. Perhaps the Browns have room for you in their mansion. Sarcasm dripped from the remark, but Lily pressed on. We could stay in the old log house until the store's ready. That way I could help you with the baby and the housework. Her mother paused. This point was worth consideration. I had broken out with a nasty rash on my face and scalp and had been colicky and fretful for days. Papa snapped the newspaper he had hidden behind during Lily's long oration. Not possible, Mama answered smoothly, following his prompt. The log house needs too many repairs. Roof leaks like a riddle. Well then, we could sleep in the wagon. Just having it in a safe place to park, to stable the horses and get clean water would be a big help. Winter's coming on. You can't get by sleeping in a wagon bed. Best you board somewhere or go back to Atlanta. Finally, Papa came out from behind his paper. You have made your bed, girl, and I am sorry that you must lie in it, for it will not give you ease. What kind of life do you expect to have with a man who drinks and gambles every cent he finds? Will Brown is a wastrel, but he is your wastrel now. May God have mercy on you. Lily saw that God alone would offer any mercy that was needed. Walls had closed behind her, and she knew she would not find a way in, so she nailed up the last boards on her own with no windows and no doors. You'll see, she assured them. He will change now that he's married and settled down. Supper came and went. No Will Brown that day or the next. On the fourth day, Mama said out loud to nobody in particular, what kind of bridegroom does not come back for his wife? It was 8 days before he finally dragged in, disheveled and smelling of filth, liquor, and a sour stomach. He had been laid up in the far ridges, trading his goods for moonshine and swallowing as much of it as he could as fast as he could. The honeymoon had been a long, dry month. Lily ran out to the wagon to greet him, and when she saw the state he was in, she climbed up onto the seat next to him and called back, Will's sick. We'll be on our way. I can see that he is, all the way from here, Mama said, and she and Papa turned their backs on them and walked into the house. When the wagon was out of their sight, Lily took the reins from Will, who was having trouble staying upright. She had never driven a team of horses before. Papa thought it was not a suitable job for females. Too weak, he claimed. Not a ladylike chore. It was only the first of many unsuitable skills she would learn, and with a strength that would have amazed her father, if only he had been able to look at her. Things don't go well for Lily, I'll give you that much.
Is Miss Judy Trapp. And since Judy has her own introduction, I'm going to leave it at that. Up to the stage. I also wanted to say that, you know, this is an event that's on the longer side, so please feel free to mill in and out as you need to do to use the restroom or get some snacks or anything. We're just
Hang on, I have to have my eyeballs to read. I just got excited to get to refill. Retha's a hard act to follow. Our styles are so different. I mean, she is a writer. I'm a storyteller. Okay. In 1955, if a welcome sign greeted visitors to my hometown, it would have read, "Welcome to Chickamauga, home of 200 friendly people and Mama." My maternal grandmother was a force to be reckoned with. She was raised in the Victorian era when children should be seen and not heard was literal and not just a suggestion. And she raised her daughters using the same rules. Our mother wanted Patty and me to enjoy our childhood, and we were raised by the method that would probably be called free range. I'm sure it grated on Mama's nerves that not only did we run like wild Indians, as she put it, racing from indoors to out and then back again, but also that we called our mother by her given name, Fanny. Our father worked construction and was away for weeks at a time, leaving us without a car. It didn't really matter to us because we could walk anywhere we wanted to go in town. But if the need arose for an out-of-town trip, we relied on Mama and her trusty black Chevy Bel Air. "Roll up your windows, girls. Roll up your windows." "Do I have to go?" I whined, trying to look pitiful. "Yes, and you know better than to even ask." "But I don't want to ride that far. It's too hot." What I really meant was that I didn't want to be cooped up in a car with Mama. "Sit up straight. Don't touch anything. Stop kicking the backs of the seats." She took the fun out of everything, and to be held captive in her hot car all the way to the mill store was going to be 45 minutes of pure torture.
45 minutes.
And Patty. I had to share the back seat with my sister, and she always got us in trouble. Every year in August, Fanny went to the mill store in Chattanooga Valley to buy material for our school dresses. 5 apiece, 1 for each school day. She forced Patty and I to go with her, of course, even though we never got to pick out our own material. We despised trips to the mill store, and we would gladly have bribed Fanny with allowance money, except we didn't get an allowance. And to make matters worse, Mama had to drive us, and she would complain every mile of the way. "Roll up your windows, roll up your windows, it's a snake." Our hands were blurred. We wound those knobs so fast. Of course, mine was the one that dragged halfway around, so my window didn't roll up as fast as Patty's. If we died, it'd be all my fault. Mama and Fanny had heard about somebody who had run over a snake and it flipped up into his car, and it was poisonous, and it bit the man, and he died instantly, and his car ran off the road into a deep ditch, and it wasn't discovered until a week later, and the body was so bloated it exploded when they tried to get it out of the car door. And when it exploded, that snake venom went everywhere. It went into one man's eyes, and he went blind instantly. And of course, by then the snake was gone. Probably went back up to the road to kill somebody else. You know how snakes are. They're not to be trusted. The devil himself sent them. Mama closed her eyes, clutched the steering wheel in a death grip, and floorboarded the Bel Air. Patty and I hung on to the armrest for dear life, and Fanny braced her hands on the dashboard as the Bel Air drifted across the center line and then swerved back when Mama opened her eyes, confident she had flattened the snake. She had missed it by a mile. Patty and I turned and looked out the back glass, watching it slither into the roadside grass. probably taking a deep breath, having defeated death yet again. She drove on, the summer sun streaming through the window glass until the air in the car was unbearable. We had to leave our windows up for the next 10 miles just in case. She had really hit that snake and it was hanging on by one fang, slapping the asphalt with every turn of the wheel. That snake was gonna be mad. Leave the windows up. That thing's probably waiting for us to let them down so he can turn loose and fly right in. I could just see the snake flying through the open window to land right in Mama's lap. She would scream, run off the road and crash, and we'd all be dead before I could even start 3rd grade. I could just see the Chattanooga Times headline, Mrs. Livonia Webb, Chickamauga Society matron, was attacked by a rattlesnake while driving on Chattanooga Valley Road to the Flintstone Mill store to buy cloth for her granddaughter's school clothes. She crashed her black 1950 Chevrolet Bel Air hardtop, killing herself, her daughter Fanny, and her 2 granddaughters, 8-year-old Judy and 6-year-old Patty, who were riding in the back seat and didn't get the windows rolled up in time to keep the snake from flying in the car. Mama wasn't finished with her snake horror stories. You know, there was a man who had a flat tire, so he took it to the gas station and had it fixed. It turns out that a rattlesnake had struck the tire and squirted venom into it. And when the man who was changing the tire had a cut on his finger, and the venom got in it, and he dropped over dead, right there in the gas. Patty and I, eyes as big as saucers, hung on her every word, taking it for truth because Mama always knew everything. Why, she'd even told us she did, and who would dare dispute her. Even Papa just listened, nodding his head and not hearing but every other word. We were nearly to the mill store before Mama would let us roll down the windows. Patty and I gulped in hot summer air and put our heads as close to them as we could without actually hanging out the window to dry the sweat on our faces and hair, wet from perspiration. But we were too quiet, which meant we were doing something wrong. When Patty giggled, Mama flipped down the rearview mirror so she could see what was going on in the back seat. There we were, our knees on the seat, hanging our heads out the window, making faces at people in passing cars. You girls better stop that business right this minute. I'll pull this car over and put you out on the side of the road. Mama, barely slowing the car, swerved to the shoulder of the road, dust and gravel erupting like an atomic blast. Patty and I scrambled up from the floorboard and, knowing what was coming, sat upright on the seat, stiff as boards. Mama